Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
Hello, and welcome to James Bond Radio. I'm back to do our first film review in over a year. Last time it was Tomorrow Never Dies, obviously. This time it's The World Is Not Enough. And I thought, how do we continue the film reviews without Chris? Because obviously, you know, we had our system down. We've got God knows how many films into the series. We got it working, we got it moving. And obviously, you know, Chris is no longer with us. So I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try something a little bit new this time. And I'm going to try it solo style-y, like Bond might, and kind of do the film reviews in a bit of a new way. So yeah, it might be good, it might be rubbish, but let's have a go and see what we can do. So it's time to talk about The World Is Not Enough. Obviously, we've got Pierce's third film, right? Some people love it, some people don't, some people are somewhere in the middle. But let's see what the JBR opinion is. Righty-ho, I've got my notes, right? I know Chris was always the one that would take the notes before, so I'm a bit new to this, so bear with me, but we'll have a go. All right, so here we go. World Is Not Enough time. Ready? Right, so it begins with the gun barrel, doesn't it? It comes along and you've got the spots, and then Bond walks into shot, and it goes da-na-na-na, and then he turns and he shoots, and then like the blood comes down and stuff, which is cool. I quite like that gun barrel. It's pretty nice. And then what happens after that? Oh yeah. Bond comes along and he's got glasses on. And then, so he's walking along and you go, oh, that's a bit weird. You've never seen Bond in glasses before. And he's holding a suitcase. And you go, oh, I wonder what's in that suitcase. It must be important. And then, so it goes into the next bit. And then, oh, fuck, what happens after that? Oh, yeah, he goes into that room and then there's the man there and he says he's a banker. And then Bond says, fuck, what does Bond say? Oh, hold on a minute. What's this?
Tom, mate, this review is fucking awful.
Oh, mate.
I think I better come in and give you a hand. What do you think?
That sounds good, mate. Yeah, I'm up for that. How are you listening in on this? I'm
sitting right next to you, mate.
There he is. Yay. All right, cool. Should we get cracking then?
Let's get cracking.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond. James.
Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British end up, sir.
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews, and discussion of all things 007.
Lucy. As you can see, I have no problem with female authority.
Oh, pipe down, 007. Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to lie.
Mate, it's good to have you back, bruv.
It is good to be back, bruv. Tell you what, I've been missing the JBR, but it's been good in another way. So I've basically got to listen to JBR as a fan the last few weeks since you brought it out, and it's so nice. Just it's music to my ears. Just on a long car journey, sticking the JBR, and I'm like,
oh, mate,
so good.
You're too kind. You're too kind. So what are you like? Here's my worries, right? Because we've got obviously No Time to Die coming soon. You do know what it's called, don't you? You haven't dug yourself into too deep a hole.
Yeah, that is one thing that I do know about the film is the title. Yeah.
So you haven't watched the trailer yet. You've not done any reading or anything like that. You're staying cold.
I tell you what, it's been hard though, man. Because obviously this year, this age, this generation of social media is just all about like there's Bond everywhere, and people. As soon as you get a little like a still from the set or something like that, it's just straight away it's on social media. Yeah. So it's been really difficult to avoid stuff. I've heard a little bits about this, that, and the other, and seen one or two pictures. But in terms of story, I think I've managed to have been really successful in avoiding some of these sort of story threads and stuff like that. But I have heard the trailer is meant to be fucking awesome.
It is pretty spot on, I'll tell you that. So how do you feel this time about going in dark? Because I know you did the same for Skyfall, didn't you? You even avoided the song right up to the moment when we walked in to watch it.
I still don't know how I managed that.
That was very impressive.
Yeah.
So, like, are you enjoying going in dark, or are you feeling a bit like, maybe I should watch the trailer?
Well, I tell you what, my plan is to alternate. So, like Bond 26, I'm going to go all in, like we did with Spectre. Yeah. Obviously, Skyfall, I went a bit dark on. Well, I went really dark on, and I'm going to try and do the same with No Time to Die. Do you know what? If the film was tomorrow, I'd be so happy just because I know bugger all about it. Yeah. And I just want to be surprised. I want to watch it. And you know what we're like. We just want the best Bond film that it can be. And you can have your expectations right up there. And, you know, I just want to watch it and be like, fuck, I did not know that was going to happen. And so hopefully I can keep it going.
Cool. It's not that far away. That's the beautiful thing, because sometimes you get spoilery things. Like, you remember last time when they leaked the script and there was crap everywhere, wasn't there? This time, nobody really knows what's going on. So there is the fact that we've only got to wait, like, you know, a few months. It should be all right as long as you can stay away from socials. That's for sure.
I've got a question for you though.
Go on, then.
Bringing this up. Okay, right. So a little envelope arrives in your door, and it says "Secret for your eyes only, Tom Sears," and you're like, "What's this?" And you pull open the top of the envelope and pull out a stack of papers, and the top of it says "No Time to Die" spec script. Now, do you pull it all out and have a read through and know exactly what's coming, or do you pop it under the bed, wait until you've seen the film, and then have a little read through?
I tell you what I do. I make it self-destruct. There's no way I'm reading that thing. I can't do it. I know in a recent episode, Dan Gale said that he ruined License to Kill for himself because he read the novelization the day before he went to see the film, and then every scene kind of knew, and he'd watched the trailer so much he kind of knew what was going to happen immediately. And it ruined it for him. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it with Spectre. I just couldn't do it. I need. Like, it's funny because I have watched the trailer and I do look at every frame and I go, oh, I wonder what's happening there. I wonder what's going on here. But at the same time, I find that fun. I find the process of speculating fun. But at the same time, I don't really want to know what it is. And I'm kind of happy to be speculating the wrong thing. Well, because then it's like, oh, all right, I wasn't expecting that. You know what I mean? So
in terms of like the trailer, obviously without giving anything away, were you happy with the amount that was shown in terms of, you know, enough to, whet the appetite without giving too much away?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was very happy with it. I think the thing with it is the trailer did show a lot, but at the same time, I'm still pretty clueless about actually what's going on. So it's, you know, you see certain set piece stunts and stuff like that. So there is that thing of, okay, I know to expect that to happen at some point. But at the same time, I've got no idea I know the basic bones of the plot. And when I say that, like the premise of the plot, like what brings Bond into action kind of thing. Other than that, don't really know a whole lot.
So if they released like a second trailer that was maybe like an extra 2 minutes on top of what you've already seen, would you watch that as well?
As a Bond podcaster, I think there is a certain amount of duty to be fulfilled, but at the same time, I think if there was an extended trailer, I don't think I'd watch it.
It's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, that is tricky. I think I might, leave that to Dobson or John or Dan to do, and then I'll sit that one out maybe. I don't know, because it's so tricky, because I do want to see it, but at the same time, a little bit scared and nervous at the same time as well, that I don't want to see something crazy that I don't want to see. I just want to analyse the trailer with you, man.
I know. Like, well, post film we can do it, maybe.
All right, then. So, what have you been up to? I've seen on Facebook you've been visiting some spy-related places recently, Chris, and I want to know all about them. What's going on?
I certainly have. So, obviously, I've not kept Bond completely out of my life, as obviously that would be impossible. I went for afternoon tea with my lovely other half recently. We went to Luton Hoo, which I posted a couple of pics on the Facebook site. Now, Luton Hoo is a really, really cool place. It's like this massive sort of manor house in the country, loads of land, absolutely beautiful place. And it was used, as probably everyone knows, in a couple of Bond films. So a lot of Never Say Never Again was filmed there, as it was like shrublands. So loads of stuff. Like you pull up outside the front and you recognise where. Do you remember Bond pulled up with his Bentley? They don't make him like this. She's still in good shape and all that sort of stuff. And like a lot of the interior as well, the sort of weights room, where when they sort of started the fight and stuff like that, and a couple of the staircases and what have you was good. So that was really sweet. But also they've got the staircase from The World Is Not Enough. Now it's only a single shot, and it's weird. When I got there, I was like, I just got so excited because I recognised the staircase. And I'm like, they must have shot loads on this. And then I went back and watched a film, and it's like a 10-second still shot without any movement or anything else. I'm like, I thought it was a bit more than that, but it still looked really cool. And I sort of sat down where Brosnan sat down, and yeah, so that was brilliant. Actually, that was really cool.
So where is that for the listeners?
So obviously it's not too far from Luton itself. Luton, it's sort of north of London basically, but it's well worth a visit. Afternoon tea. It's like we did afternoon tea in Stoke Park. And that was brilliant. And obviously you got to do a Bond location as well. And it's kind of like that. It's lovely surroundings and definitely recommend it. Yeah.
What was that museum I saw you went to? You posted loads of photos. There was loads of Bond spy gadgets.
You know what? I didn't even know about this. So I went to see my dad a couple of months back. And he said to me, have you heard of Captain Peter Mason? And I was like, well, the name rings a bell. I think, and I remember it's something to do with the army or something like that. And he basically said, well, he was one of Fleming's mates. Yeah. And he took me to this museum. So this is the Combined Military Services Museum. So it's in Malden in Essex. And it's this sort of wealthy guy has just got this huge array of military weapons and armour and all stuff like that. So he's made this museum basically. And we turned up sort of late. We didn't really have a lot of time. So my dad took me straight to this section all about this Captain Peter Mason. And he was, and as it was sort of reported on the area where we were, he was like a really good friend of Fleming's. And it basically had a whole section of gadgets from World War II, proper SOE gadgets, but so many of them are really similar to the Bond gadgets. So you've got poison pens, you've got like shoes with blades that come out of them. You've got like all the different types of sort of razors with poison in them. And like you're watching it and you're like, wow, this is so cool. But this guy, right, Captain Peter Mason, he is definitely one of, if not the main inspiration behind Bond, because he went behind enemy lines several times. He sort of used loads of different disguises. He had reversible jackets like Octopussy, which I was like, oh man, that's wicked. And he was basically sent in on a mission. This was after the war now, to take out all the Nazi war criminals and like any sort of high up in the sort of Nazi war criminal. Yeah. He was assigned to basically track them down and get rid of them. And I think it was the mission line was to make them a permanent. What was it? Shit. It was something like a permanent part of Her Majesty's government or something. I can't remember. I'll get the line anyway. But basically, it means take them out. Yeah. And we have to go there, man. We have to go there.
Make sure some harm comes to them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it was so cool.
Wicked.
But it's got all these guns. It's got a few Wolfers. Had some props. It had a PPK from Skyfall. It had a couple of other actual props from the Bond films as well. It even had like this weird, like a couple of weird things. There was like a lipstick weapon, which I thought, a femme fatale might use. There was a bollock kosher, which made me wince when I read it. And there was a garrote wire hidden inside a Johnny. So that was kind of an interesting one.
A Johnny. For our American non-British cousins, that would be a prophylactic
a prophylactic, sheath, a condom.
A sheath. Yes. All right. So that was the Combined Military Services Museum.
Yeah, in Malden in Essex. So 100% there has to be a JBR visit to that in the future.
All right.
Definitely.
Sounds good to me, mate. Yeah. So before we get cracking on the film, I have another question for you.
Yes.
Knives Out. Have you seen it?
Yes, I have indeed. Now this one, it was kind of strange. I think Darren D-Nobs or Darren Noble had sort of said he went to see it there was a few of them and they enjoyed it. And I had already planned to see it with a couple of mates. And it was the sort of thing where obviously the cast is brilliant, isn't it? It's such a good cast. And Reed Johnson, the director, has done a couple of decent films as well. But you're watching it and you see Daniel Craig in the background, he sort of plays that little key of the piano and you're like, oh, this is kind of interesting. Now, obviously we won't put too many spoilers because for everyone listening. But then he talks, and he's got this American sort of South American drawl, which if anyone's seen Logan Lucky, obviously he had an American accent then as well, and it does take a bit of getting used to, doesn't it? Like that first 10-15 minutes, you're like, oh. Like, not that it's bad, it's just...
It's that deep southern drawl, isn't it? It just doesn't feel right coming out of Mr. Bond.
Yeah, really. Yeah. But the film itself, I thought was great fun. And Ana de Armas, man, she's great.
Yeah.
She's brilliant. I mean, she is... obviously, I haven't seen the trailer or whatever, but I think she's going to be awesome in the film.
I think, to be honest, I think combined with that, I think Knives Out was almost like a breakout performance for her. I think Bond.
Yeah.
And I think...
Yeah, and Blade Runner. She was awesome in Blade Runner.
I think she's going to be a big deal in years to come.
Yeah, Beauty as well, isn't she?
All right, very nice then. So should we talk about The World Is Not Enough?
Yeah, I think
it's been a year since we did Tomorrow Never Dies.
Oh, that's insane, isn't it?
That mental?
Yeah.
So talk to me about your previewing thoughts. How were you feeling about The World Is Not Enough before you watched it?
So now this was an interesting one because I do remember not long after it came out, obviously I went to see it. I was at uni at the time, went to see it with a load of uni mates, and God knows how many times I saw it at the cinema. I remember thinking, actually, I really, really enjoyed it. And at one point, it was vying for my top Brosnan film alongside Tomorrow Never Dies. There was a time where I was like, I wasn't too sure about GoldenEye, and I thought it was between the other two. And it's also the Bond film that I haven't seen in the longest amount of time, because we've been to, the cinemas, seeing the Craigs and everything, and I did an anniversary review day with Rory Cooper, busting through a load of them, and Die Another Day was one of them. So I hadn't seen The World Isn't Enough in 5-6 years, which is crazy, but it got me excited. I was like, I just can't wait to watch it.
It's like what we said before. I remember being so into For Eyes Only as a kid. And when I say, like, I was probably 9 or 10, I back-to-back that film so hard. And I knew it so much that it came to a point where I just couldn't watch it anymore because I just knew every second of it. And then I turned it off and made a conscious effort to not watch that film. And the time I watched it again was when we reviewed it for JBR. So I probably didn't watch For Eyes Only for like best part of 20 years.
Blimey, man.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
It's a good film as well. 20 years.
Yeah, I know. It is a great one. And I the thing with that is it really did work, because I remember when I watched it again for JBR, it felt fresh again. I'd lost that feeling of like, I've seen this too much. You know what I mean? So there is something to be said for having a long break. For specific series. When we get to Die Another Day, that's going to be almost 20 years, isn't it? Because that'll be, 2020, 18 years since I last saw it.
You say that, but I think it's so ingrained in your head that you just dream about it every night, so you know the filmed up back to back anyway.
Yeah, I love it so much. Cool. So my thoughts, World Is Not Enough, I loved it when I saw it in the cinema. I proper loved it, and I had a relationship with the Brosnans where I had 3 knockout, balls out, loved them films, one after the other. I saw GoldenEye, obviously, as I've said many times, that was like the film that changed it all for me and turned me into a nutter. Went to see that loads at the cinema. I remember coming out of Tomorrow Never Dies and being like, this is my favourite Bond film. Love it. I love it so much. I love it. It's brilliant. And then the same again happened with World Is Not Enough. I loved it and I adored it. And I know some mates of mine who are, they enjoy Bond, but they're not what you would call hardcore Bond fans. They just, solidly like Bond. They'll go and see them all. And I remember them saying that The World Is Not Enough was like, that was their favourite scene of Brosnan as well.
That's wicked.
And I do get it, because I feel like when you look back at something like Tomorrow Never Dies, I do find there are bits of, like, once you get into the whole Devonshire sinking and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of plot to get through before you get to the next kind of action set piece and all that kind of stuff. And I get where people might kind of lose interest with Tomorrow Never Dies a little bit during those lulls, but there's some real top drawer stuff in The World Is Not Enough. Sadly, there's also some stuff that really lets it down as well in a lot of places. But yeah, I think my estimations of The World Is Not Enough before we get stuck in is that it was a Bond film that just narrowly missed out on real greatness. Like, I feel like this is Pierce's Spy Who Loved Me. Almost.
Yeah.
Almost.
It's a third thing. It's third film, obviously, Goldfinger, Your Spies, and stuff like that. And Skyfalls. But yeah, no, I know exactly where you're coming from with that. But it is nice. It's hard, isn't it, to not watch a Bond film for a long time? But there is something to be said for if you can do it. It is also really nice to see something that you haven't seen for 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years.
Yeah, big stuff.
But yeah, good stuff. Right.
All right, then should we get cracking in? What happens? Did you not like my review of the gun barrel before?
Well, actually, I was going to say that's pretty much how I would have said it. So, so what do we get? Okay, so we open up the gun barrel. What do you think of the music? So this, obviously, Tomorrow Never Dies gun barrel is quite classic Bond type music. This one, a lot more techno heavy.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of similar to the Die Another Day one, obviously. And, what do you think of the sort of music there? Are you okay? Obviously, do you think it fits with the film and it's fine as it is, or would you prefer a bit more?
One of the standout things I noticed this time is how much I really do enjoy the score for this one, and there's just when I pressed play and saw those dots come across the screen, it was just like, I so miss seeing a gun barrel at the beginning. You know what I mean? Because it's been such a rare thing in recent films. And just to see it there as standard, as it probably always should have been. They should never really have moved it. I get the Casino Royale choice.
That's the one that's okay.
That's the one that I'm like, I kind of like the fact that they mixed up the formula a bit. After that, it should have been back to business straight away. And just seeing that, just back into business as usual with Bond. Gun barrel, Bond walks in, Brosnan does his brilliant gun barrel turn and shoot, which I still think is the best one, the Brosnan performance. I liked it. Yeah, and again, it's not. It's obviously a more techno-y tune, but at the same time, it's not so jarring that it's like oof, you know. So I think it works. Yeah. What about you?
Sweet. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's obviously it's nice to have a bit of difference within the themes. If you think, some of the sort of standout, you think of Live and Let Die, License to Kill, Fiore's only like completely different, but very connected to that particular film, and they work. And I think it's good to sort of mix it up a bit. So yeah, I'm down with that, definitely.
Very nice. So I tell you something that I really do like. Once the Irish comes out and we're in the action, we see Bond in a pair of glasses, which we've not seen before. Quite interesting. What I absolutely adore is immediately, there's no messing about. What have you got in the background? You've got ding, 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 ding. You've got Bond music immediately. And I know I've beaten this like a dead horse for years now, but God, that makes such a difference. Bond is just literally walking across the street and already I'm excited because that music's on. If it was just Bond walking across the street, I would still enjoy it, but nowhere near as much. Well, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I know exactly. It puts you straight in the mood, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So and I like the fact, obviously, Bilbao, you got the Guggenheim Museum. So I like it when Bond kind of is in these interesting places, and obviously that hadn't long been built, and so that was cool. But yeah, like just walking across the street, got the music, and like, yeah, we're into sort of, it's going to be good. Something's going to happen already, and it's only, the film's only just opened. So obviously he goes to see Lachey's, the Swiss banker. And what do you think of this particular scene? I thought it was quite cool.
Yeah, I tell you, there's something I do enjoy. I suppose another observation I made is there is a lot of innuendo in this script, right?
So much, yeah.
Loads of it, right? And
I think this is probably the film with the most innuendo. Well, I would say. What do you think? It's got to be up there anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. But so I watched this with my missus, and she was just like rolling her eyes every 5 minutes. And I was like, you know what though? I know why some people would roll their eyes at that, because it obviously is very scripted and it's very like of its time. But man,
I'm sure they're perfectly rounded.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, I know that's cheesy, and it's, would you like to look over my figures? Of course, right? Of course it's cheesy, but man, do I miss that shit. That for me is such a big part of what I love about Bond. This film, man, is way more Roger.
Yeah,
than
I thought
anything.
that as well. And again, like in terms, I found it quite light-hearted in a lot of places. Obviously, it does get dark in places, but I found this probably the lightest of the Pierce Brosnans in terms of like humour and innuendo. It's definitely the most Roger Moore like Bond of Brosnan's, I'd say. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I also think it's quite a complicated one in terms of, okay, so Bond goes to see Lachey's. Lachey's wants to return Robert King's money, like, so he's got that big suitcase of money.
Yeah.
And then Bond is on about that the money's been paid, like Robert King bought a stolen report, and then MI6 agent was killed for it. And there's a few things to follow. It's not like a straight, easy, okay, this is exactly what's happening. So it is a bit of a thinker, and I quite like that, because it's nice that some films you kind of have to work out a little bit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you do have to follow it. It's kind of like we said about The Living Daylights, isn't it? There's a lot happening in The Living Daylights, and it's just one little throwaway line somebody says if you miss that line, can sort of derail you, and then they go to the next thing. You're like, how did he know this? Why did he know to go there, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, this is like, okay, so hold on, he's got some money that he's returning to somebody, and then there's a report in MI6. Okay, right. Okay, I think I've got that. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot to take on board, isn't it? Yeah, what I do really like about it is when Bond's hard as nails, and the guy's like, what's the line he says? He's like, I'm giving you a chance to walk out with the money or something.
Yeah,
and
then
I'm giving you a chance to walk out with your life.
That's so good.
I like that. Yeah.
Definitely. And then he's like, well, strictly from a banker, the numbers are not on your side, or whatever, something like this. And then obviously, it's quite cool, isn't it? And then Bond comes back with, that, you haven't taken into account my hidden assets.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of those sort of lines, obviously, around the sort of banking thing, which is great. And then I like the fact these glasses, obviously he's got the little gadget, hasn't he? So he presses a button and it sort of releases this stun blast or whatever it is out the gun. But he is pretty nails in this scene. So he takes out one or two, and obviously he shoots one or two, and it's just, you think it's at that point it's just Lachey's in him, and it's screwing up, and then obviously you hear this. Lachey's is about to say, okay, take me in, I'll tell you everything, but you must protect me, and then and then obviously a knife in the back of his neck, and it's a cigar girl. So that's really cool. So when you first see her, you don't really, you think she's just delivering cigars and that's it. But then you realise, okay, actually she's this sort of assassin, and obviously Bond it looks to follow her, but the police turn up and he locks himself in, and then he turns around and one of the goons sort of gets up and has him under gunpoint, and that's the point where you see that little red dot, and then he obviously gets shot. And again, this is another point, because at this stage of the film, like, ooh, who's that? And it's almost a bit Red Grant-esque in from Russia, when he saves him. Yeah. But in that, Red Grant's doing it. But in this scene, you don't know who it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And Bond has that little look out the window, and you're like, where is it? Have you actually paused it to see if you can see Renard in any of the windows?
Do you know what? I didn't. I should have done. Did you pause it?
I did pause it. Now, when he looks, you can't see him, but there is one window on the opposite wall, which is open. And I'm sure that must have been like, there's a little ledge in a balcony, and I think that's probably where he was. But
interesting.
Yeah.
So I feel like the tone gets set straight away, because there's what I would call, what would I call it? Like real style Bond, I suppose, or as real as you could possibly get, which is your From Russia with Love's, your Casinos, your License to Kills, those kinds of films. And then this sort of like fantastical Bond. And of course, something like Moonraker is off the scale there. And then this one is kind of like, it's up there, isn't it? In terms of like, it's sort of like, comic book Bond is the wrong word, but it's kind of getting on for that world, isn't it? You know what I mean? Yeah. But the one thing I do bear in mind when I watch something like this is I love Casino Royale, and I love From Russia with Love, and I love those gritty, down-to-earth Bond movies. For Your Eyes Only is another one of those. But I also love a submarine car. Do you know what I mean? I also love that shit too. Yeah. And this falls into that bracket for me, is I also love this, even though, you got some cheesy dialogue, you got the loads of the innuendo and all that kind of stuff. I love it. I adore it. And one of the things that gets me super excited is, okay, so he's in this room, he's got to get out. You got the police coming now. He's using his wits to escape. He's like, right, okay, if I tie this round, I can abseil out the window. Okay, brilliant. And as soon as he's made that decision and he starts moving, the Bond theme kicks in again. And it's just so beautiful when that moment happens. He can be doing the most mundane thing, but as soon as those three notes kick in, I'm fucking excited, and I've got chills down the spine as soon as that happens.
Yeah.
So how do you think about his escape? Because it does take it. I would judge this along the same lines as that little cable cutter on the front of the BMW in Tomorrow Never Dies. The judgment of the height is absolutely spot on, isn't it? Do you know what I
absolutely.
mean?
Yeah, oh yeah, completely. But I think this is a really cool sort of escape route. So obviously strips that thing off the window, off the blind or whatever it was, ties it to that dude, and I do love the way he just smashes the window with a suitcase, pops out, no hesitation, over the sort of balustrade or whatever it is, falls down, and it's a cool stunt. It's a really, really cool stunt. And then you think, well, hang on a minute, how's he going to slow down? And then the dude sort of wakes up and he's hanging on that table. Yeah. And you see Bond just hanging in midair. Obviously the table leg breaks, and then he just arrives, and he's so nonchalant, isn't he? Yeah. Just sort of takes it off. He's like, just walks away as if, I do this every day. And I do like that. I think it's a really cool stunt. And he just walks away with the money, and all these police cars are driving past. You're like, this is why we love Bond. Yeah,
I do. This is a long pre-title sequence.
Yeah. Well, initially, you probably know this, and probably everyone listening knows this, but initially, that was going to be the end of the pre-title sequence. Yeah. So that leap out, and then him walking away, and it was going to cut to the titles. Now, that stunt is good, but that, as a pre-titles, isn't strong enough. So they did a bit of a showing, a screening, and the audience were like, is that it? Is that all pre-titles? Like, obviously, you've had some killer ones. Tomorrow Never Dies was class GoldenEye, obviously bungee jumping and everything. Yeah. And so they thought, well, hang on a minute. Okay, we'll push that back. And in the end, we're given, like, obviously the longest pre-title sequence ever. But I'm really glad they did that. And the next sort of bits that follow in London and MI6 and the Thames are just insanely good.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like you say, if you just had that as a pre-title sequence, that would feel a bit flat. Because you've come to expect, like, when you look at the older films and you've got things like Live and Let Die, Man with Golden Gun, where Bond doesn't even show up, it's that works for me. But in this day and age, we've been so accustomed to this huge action set piece where Bond is directly involved and there's this huge action sequence going on, that if that was it, you would be like, oh, is that it? You would have that feeling. But like you say, when you get to the boat chase in a minute, that to me is a series defining boat chase. That is an absolute brilliant trailer moment boat chase. Again, a lot of story to get through though. So I imagine if that had have been the pre-title sequence, we'd had the theme tune now, and then it would have probably opened up with King arriving at MI6. You would imagine. So so what's happening here then?
Okay, so King walks up. Obviously, Bond's already given him the money. You see the money's being scanned. And then Bond goes to see Moneypenny. And this is, again, the innuendo. So he's got this sort of cigar hole, tube, hasn't he? And he's like, I thought you might like one of these. I know exactly where to put that. And obviously he chucks it in the bin. And I think I do love the Pierce Brosnan and Samantha Bond. They've got such good chemistry as
they
Bond
really
and Moneypenny.
Do you know what? Yeah. I was thinking about this yesterday when I watched the film, right? When I think back, I don't think one of the weaknesses of the Brosnan period is I don't really get the chemistry with the Bond girls all that much. I think Natalia was solid. Yeah. I don't get any chemistry with Michelle Yeoh. I don't get any chemistry with Christmas at all. And I don't get any chemistry with Jinx either. But he has bang on chemistry with Moneypenny. I think that really works. What do you think it is? Because like we often said, Sean with Lois Maxwell was you could imagine they had a little fling at some point. Yeah. And then Roger's chemistry was more like a teasing brotherly sisterly relationship. Yeah. It certainly wasn't a sexual teasing. No. What do you think about Brosnan / Samantha?
I think there's a lot of I think if circumstances were different, they definitely would have had a bit of a slap and tickle with each other, I imagine. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I think so.
Yeah, there's that. As I've often said, there's like a little twinkle in Samantha Bond's eye.
Yeah. Well, you got that bit in GoldenEye, obviously, where she's a bit sort of, sexual harassment and all that. But she's obviously playing on it a bit, and this scene is a really cool one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So this bit then, so King and M have a little
Old
bit of
friends.
backstory. They read law at Oxford together.
That's really cool, isn't it? Because we don't often get backstory for M, and it's nice to know. Okay, so this is.
And do you know what else I noticed? She references being a mother as well in this one, doesn't she? Because of the whole backstory with Elektra, which I was like, has that ever happened elsewhere? I'm not sure it has.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a really good point, and what's her kid doing?
Yeah. Where's baby M?
Yeah,
that's what I want to know.
That's a really good point. Yeah. But this is quite cool. So obviously, this is the first time, really, I think, that M's been involved in terms of knowing someone that's a part of the plot. I think, so obviously, Robert King sees Bond. He's excellent, the man who retrieved my money. And there's a whole, I might steal him, and construction's not my strong point. Quite the opposite, in fact, and stuff like that. So it's a nice little play. But there is interesting. So Robert King leaves, and M obviously mentions he's a man of integrity, and Bond says, he buys stolen reports for £3 million, and M looks at him but doesn't say anything, and I think that's a really interesting moment. So she's obviously, this is one of her friends. Bond has brought up a really valid point about this guy, and she's just ignored it. And that pace basically comes back to bite her a little bit in terms of how strong her relationship is. It clouds her judgment, basically, doesn't it?
Well, I think there's some really nice stuff with M in this. Like, I really do, because what in our sort of fairy tale mind is that the world is this good versus evil place, but there's so many different shades of grey in between, isn't there? There's somebody like M has to make some very difficult decisions whereby there is no clearly defined good or bad choice or good versus evil choice. It's like, okay, to stop this thing, I'm going to have to send this person on a mission and they're probably going to die. So I'm sacrificing this person's life for the greater good. And there's a lot of weight to that. And what I like about this, especially later on when we find out about the whole Elektra kind of thing with that whole backstory, I think that's a really nice thing to explore, of where you see there's the professional M who's got to get the job done versus the human side of M. And I think that's why we get the comment about being a mother, to humanize her a bit, so she's not just this hard-ass kind of, boss figure. Yeah,
definitely. And I think it adds that interesting strand which we just haven't had before with that particular character. So that's good. But so they sit down and they M offers Bond a drink. And he notices his eyes sort of fizzing, and then he looks at his fingertips, and there's sort of a bit of foam on his fingertips, and he suddenly realises, shit, the money. And so he basically goes legging it through MI6 after Robert King. And there's a funny bit where he's sort of racing behind Q, and Q's like, sort of rolls his eyes.
How good is it to see Desmond again?
So nice, man. He's brilliant. But obviously Bond ends up being too late, and Robert King, you see him get there, and then suddenly something flares up on his lapel pin, doesn't it? And seeing that explosion out of the MI6 building, like rip a huge hole, that's pretty bloody good as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I suppose it took me a long time when I first saw this to realise what that whole thing was. With the fingers.
Well, I think it's the same for anyone, because Tanner has to explain it later on, doesn't
he? So he basically calls it a fertilizer bomb, doesn't he? So Bond sees the reaction and knows that alcohol would react with that, and it makes that connection. So obviously then we've got him sort of looking out of the hole, and there's Cigar Girl with the laser pointer thing.
Bit of badass,
and she's got like a leather jumpsuit on, isn't she? Which to me is like a very old school Bond girl thing. Like that's a 70s Bond look, if you ask me, if you've got a leather jumpsuit on.
Not that you're complaining, though.
No, absolutely not. No, I fully encourage that sort of behaviour. It's great. Bond jumps in the Q boat, M's fishing boat, as he later tells us, his little retirement project.
Yeah, can you imagine Q like just out in that sort of boat doing his fishing? I think it would be hilarious.
It would be hilarious. Yeah, God bless him. But so then we have. Would you say this is the best boat chase in the series? Let's throw it back, because obviously we've got Live and Let Die.
Straight away comes to mind.
It's a good boat chase. It's a good one.
Yeah.
This one, there's one shot in particular that I remember like sort of jumping out of my seat a little bit when I first saw it. Do you remember there's that shot? It's quite early on where he kind of goes through the wake of Cigar Girl's boat,
Yes.
and the boat comes up, and it's like it looks like it's going to flip,
Yeah,
and
I
it
know
just
exactly
about
right.
doesn't, and comes back down, and it's like,
oh yeah.
yeah, that's a beautiful moment.
And another thing about there's a lot about this to love actually, but you really see obviously Brosnan's behind the wheel, and you see him get soaked.
You do,
and you see and he's obviously loving it, but to see that up close and see that involvement, I think is brilliant, and it really puts you in with Bond and puts you there. And I guess another thing to mention as well, obviously in recent Bond films, we've had a lot of London in terms of with Sam Mendes and various things. We've been kind of a bit spoilt really with how much England and London, because there was a time where aside from coming to see M, that's all you get of the UK. But and us obviously being from here, going back to this opening sequence of The World Is Not Enough, we've never seen so much of London, and it's so good, and it's like a long scene and all over the Thames, and for us as Brits, and it was fantastic to see, and because we hadn't seen that sort of amount in London for such a long time, and
that's it. I remember.
So cool.
I remember saying the same thing, because it was back in the day. It was always the exotic locations, which is great. But you typically see a smidgen of London at the beginning when Bond gets his orders, and then that would be pretty much it. So to see him in iconic locations like that, and at the same time, it's like there he is, precisely where Daniel would speed past, trying to shoot down Blofeld's chopper in years to come.
And also George standing on the little lamppost opposite.
There's a lot of Bond history there, isn't it?
Die Another Day door on the other side.
There's that too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that is wicked to see, in such a sort of iconic location like that. Yeah. And so go on then. What do you how highly do you rate this boat chase?
Okay.
Because Live and Let Die is a great one.
Live and Let Die.
Any other boat chases that spring to mind?
Well, obviously you got From Russia, you got Man with a Golden Gun, you got Moonraker, the sort of hovercraft / boat chase. Yeah. So there are a few that are decent, but I think it's got to be between Live and Let Die and The World Is Not Enough as the best one. Yeah. And it's hard push, because Live and Let Die is obviously kind of like a straight boat chase. Obviously this one, there's a bit more, there's only 2 boats involved, firstly. And obviously the Q-boat being a bit of the Gadget, and you got weapons, and Cigar Girl's got sort of different machine guns and stuff on there. Yeah. So it is different, but it's got to be out of those 2. I'm not sure which. I think I might, I don't know, I might still go old school with Live and Let Die. But there's what I do love about The World Is Not, or maybe I'll put them equal actually, because there's a lot in this to love. But there's some really good stunts. So there's a part where the Sunseeker just rips away that walkway, that little restaurant, and the timing on that is amazing. Sarah Donahue is a stuntman for that, and that is just like pitch perfect. And then you've got obviously the barrel roll. Now, what do you think of that?
I feel it needed a slide whistle, Chris.
You think what?
And it needed a slide whistle.
If only. Yeah. But that was awesome as well, wasn't it? And just seeing, you can see the little inverted jets rolling it in the air, and that was great. And then obviously you've got the bit, the location that we went to, it's only a little one, but it's so cool in the docks where he rips it around the corner and totally drenches the clampers, which is brilliant. Then
do you know what? I remember when I saw that for the first time, that was an audience cheer out loud when the traffic wardens get soaked. Yeah. Because
obviously people must know that now, but
nobody likes a traffic warden.
No one likes a traffic warden. And there's a TV show about them clamping, and everyone was like, why would you, if you're so hated, why would you want to be on TV? But obviously they went for it, and I think whoever was driving the boat was like, right, this is for everyone out there, and just drenched them. And then it hits that sort of double bump, doesn't it? It goes poof, and then poof, up the top that we've been to, and that's really cool. And then so here's an interesting bit. Obviously at the end it sort of launches through the canoe club sort of hut type thing, ends up on the road, but yet it still can drive on the road. Now, what is your... Because I know some people aren't too keen on that aspect of it.
You could say that's a step too far.
Yeah.
You could, and I would understand that, because, he still has quite a high degree of control over the boat, doesn't he?
Yeah.
At the same time, he does have the huge afterburner thing on the back, which is going to propel him forward.
Yeah.
But he's not going to have a great deal in the way of left and right steerage. But in the tone of this film, I'm just willing to suspend my disbelief and go with it.
Well, if you think before he gets onto the road, he does that thing where dives the Q-boat underneath the barrier, does his tie, and does his side. That's very Roger Bond, isn't it?
Yeah, big style.
Big style, but that's a cool moment. And then obviously he's sort of driving through that fish market. But I do love the bit where he just explodes out onto the water, onto the Thames, and you see the Millennium Dome, the music kicks in, and you're like, oh man, this is so good.
That is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And one thing is that we've had the Houses of Parliament, Big Ben, that they've bombed past already. But then when you see the Millennium Dome, which I suppose for anybody who doesn't know England all that well, the Millennium Dome, it was this huge project to celebrate the millennium, wasn't it?
It cost about £800 million as well.
So nowadays it's a huge concert venue and all the rest of it. The O2. They don't call it the Millennium Dome anymore, do they? But yeah, so that was something that had like just been built to celebrate the year 2000. God, that makes me feel old. I mean, it's 20 years ago, isn't it? It's 1999 this bad boy came out. 20 years. And I often find myself saying, for people who sort of rag on Pierce a bit and Pierce's films, it's like this is the same period of time between Majesties and License to Kill. And thinking how different those films are. It's the same distance now between World Is Not Enough and now.
That's
it's
crazy.
It's mental, isn't it? Or Thunderball and A View to a Kill, same amount of time, and it's when you see how different those times were and the different feels and all the rest of it. It is pretty incredible, isn't it? Yeah, because they're in our recent memory, especially if you're over 30 or whatever, because they're in recent memory, you still kind of think of them as coming out yesterday.
Yeah, we do. For us, it does feel like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's strange, but also pretty cool.
Yeah.
So they get to basically they're outside the Millennium Dome. Bond's got his torpedoes that he fires, and the cigar girl basically earths the Sunseeker and steals that hot air balloon, doesn't she? Now there's another cool stunt where Bond basically drives a Q-boat and it launches into the air, leaps off, grabs onto the rope.
Yeah.
And then they're basically hanging above the dome. And that's pretty iconic, that whole... You've got the dome itself and you've got them sort of above it. And this is the point where basically he's sort of saying that he can protect
I can protect you. Yeah.
Not from him. And then obviously she shoots a canister. And straight away, Bond knows, he's got more chance of dropping however high he is than to obviously stay where he is. So he lets go. And that whole bit where he plunges down, hits a roof, rolls down the roof... This is hard-hitting Bond.
Yeah.
And again, another awesome stunt. Mark Mottram was a stunt dude in this. And you know that bit where he crashes through the wire? You've got those two tinsel wires. Yeah. And he crashes through those and ends up hanging off by one hand. And you're like, man, you can feel it, can't you?
Yeah.
And it's pretty hard-hitting. And that's a really good end. Like, imagine if they'd ended with him like walking across a river after being at the bank, or compared to rolling down the Millennium Dome, hanging off one hand.
Well, do you know what it reminds me of? That the way it dissolves into the theme song, the title sequence.
Yeah.
Is there's that thing in the Majesties where he's hanging off of Big Ben, hanging onto the thing. There's something about him rolling down that thing and hanging onto that, which is very reminiscent of that imagery.
That's very true, actually.
Yeah. And that's also obviously a plot device, isn't it? Because the whole shoulder, you definitely see him kind of land on that shoulder, and that obviously comes back as part of the story later.
Just before we go on to titles, I've got to mention one thing as well. We had a cool little day. It was me, Brian Dobson, Jason Carr, and Richard Neves, and we did the whole walk over the O2.
Oh, yeah.
So, again, that's something that's definitely recommended. It was quite cool. It was pretty cold day, actually, if I remember. But you get to walk, there's like a set pathway, and you're sort of, there's like a cable that you're kind of tied onto, and you sort of walk up. And some sections are pretty steep and some aren't too bad. And you get to the top and there's a big standing area in the top, and you can, they give you like 20 minutes, something like that on the top, and you can like look around. The views are great. Nice. And we actually got someone to sort of point out, this is where the stunt guy for Bond landed. That's where he rolled down. Whoa. And all that sort of stuff. So it was really, really cool, actually. That's it's a good, definitely worth doing. Is that something you'd do you think?
Yeah, definitely, man. Okay. You know me, I'm not much of a daredevil. I don't like to jump off dams and stuff like you boys. But yeah, I'd be up for a bit of that. Yeah,
great. Sounds good.
Okay. All right then, I've got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts on the song?
Okay, thoughts on the song. Now,
It's my new round theme tune.
yeah. It's in. Okay. Okay. So it's not a song that you straight away think iconic Bond song. But for me, I think it suits this film really well, and it sounds Bondian.
Yeah.
I think the theme and the underlying sort of the tune itself, it just sounds Bond to me.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's that whole thing about Shirley Manson, who's a proper Bond fan and got so excited, and that definitely adds to it as well. But you know, it would never achieve iconic song status compared to your Shirley Bassey's or whatever.
It's a funny one. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, no. All I'm going to say is, but I like it. I think it suits the film well, and I think it goes really well with the titles in terms of how it's used.
It is a funny one, right? Don Black on lyrics, obviously. That's nice. When you think of that beginning string line, I think that's perfect Bondian.
Yeah.
It's great. The verses are awesome, very sexy, very sultry, very Bond, and yeah, there's definitely the boudoir thing going on, isn't there? The width of the boudoir, it stinks of boudoir as far as I'm concerned. But for some reason, it falls short of the best Bond songs.
You know why? Because I think the majority of Bond songs fall into kind of ballad type song or soft song versus maybe rock or pops, like pop, pop rock. And there's not much in between, but I think this song by Garbage is one of those ones that's kind of obviously a little bit more rock related, but it's kind of in the middle. It's definitely not your ballad, but it's not quite your pop rock either. It's kind of in the middle. So
I suppose for me what it comes down to is, I guess it's the chorus that is because I think a chorus has to have that thing that is instantly sing-alongable and easy and catchy. That's the songwriter's thing, is you want to have a hooky chorus. It's that one that just jumps into your brain, you can't get rid of it. You know what I mean? And this one doesn't have that. No. It's very wordy. The world is not enough, but it's such a perfect place to start my love. And if you're strong enough and bling, 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 together we can take the world apart. That's a lot for a chorus.
Yeah.
And I think that's potentially what it is. I would even say it's a great song when you look at all the lyrics. They've not done a Madonna. They've thought about it. They've gone in there. They've written a really great song, but it's not top tier Bond song. No. What sort of tier would you say it comes? Well,
how many tiers are we talking? If we've got, say, 4 tiers, obviously your top tier is your Goldfingers. Yeah, definitely. I'd put Skyfall up there, actually. I really like that. Obviously, I'd say there's lots in there. Obviously, nobody does it better as well, and some of those. I think your tier 4 would be your Madonna. I think that's a tier on its own. And then and then tier 2 and 3 is where you get your tricky ones. For instance, I'd say Living Daylights for me is a tier 2, but some people might put it as a tier 3. I'd put it as a tier 2.
I would say License to Kill for me is a tier 3.
Yeah, I think so. It's a tough one.
It is a tough one, good, and it's such a subjective thing that some people would shout at me for saying that. I would, something maybe like For Your Eyes Only might be a tier 3. Yeah,
I'd agree with that. All Time High, I'd put as a tier 3.
Yeah.
But then Live and Let Die, tier 1.
100%.
Thunderball, possibly tier 2.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Yeah. You Only Live Twice could be.
Oh, that's definitely a tier 1, man. That has to be a 1. Think of those strings.
Diamonds as well.
Diamonds is a 1 for me. Good, I do love Diamonds.
Yeah. Man with a Golden Gun, so that would be a 2 or 3, wouldn't it? That'd probably be a 3.
I would say a high 3 or a low 2.
It's in the middle.
Yeah.
So it is tough to classify them, but I think, The World Is Not Enough would be probably
We already did this episode, didn't we? That was a double bill where we rated all the songs. I've forgotten what we said now. We'll have to go
That's right, we'll just edit it in. Easily done.
All right.
Right, okay, so titles. Oh, actually, before we carry on, what do you think of the actual title sequence? So obviously here we're getting Daniel Cline and we're using a lot of oil. I love the contrast between, you've got the black oil, the women in black a bit, obviously like Strawberry Fields, indeed. And then you've got the contrast with sort of the rainbow colours behind it. And I really like that. And you've got the oil, the oil pumps and everything like that.
Yeah, I liked it. It's a balls out, not a balls out. I would say it's a boobs out title sequence, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've got the silhouetted ladies again. Some aren't even in silhouette.
Yeah,
Proper, boobs flying around everywhere. We got some oil. It's what I would call 90s retro, where it's modern for that time, but it's also very flavoured from the olden days as well, which I appreciate. Yeah, a little bit psychedelic in places as well. There's a bit of a 60s vibe in there because you've got like all those kind of, like that sort of like rainbow hue you get when you see oil on the road or whatever. Yeah. There's those sorts of colours infused in there as well, which I like. I like it. What do you think? Do you rate it as a title sequence?
Again, obviously, the running theme of the film is to do with oil, and I think that works well. And yeah, I think it's a good title sequence for me. Yeah, I like it a lot.
Good stuff.
Cool.
So so there we go. We finished the title sequence there, and we are at Robert King's funeral, aren't we? So tell me what happens here.
Okay, so it's a very short scene. Obviously, we see Elektra's there. We see Bond. We see M. We see Moneypenny. We see Robinson, Tanner as well, I think. And it's briefly just to sort of introduce the character of Elektra to Bond, and Bond kind of knows of her and obviously recognises her, and she eyes him, so she clocks him a bit. And it's a very brief moment. And obviously he's wearing a sling from his injury, which obviously comes back later on in the film as well. Yeah. So it's a little moment. And then from there, we go to Castle Thames. So this is MI6's sort of HQ in Scotland. And I really like this. I'd kind of forgotten how much I like the idea of MI6 having a sort of a HQ within a castle. Yeah. And like the whole sets and the setting, I really like it, and this whole scene with M and Q and R and all that, I really, this is one of my favourite sort of moments in the film around this area. It's something that I really enjoy. What about you? What do you think of the sort of location, as it were? Yeah,
it's nice. I like it a lot. It's one of those things where when you think back to the Roger period, you have the same Universal Exports setting, over and over again, and even in the Connery period, I suppose. But you have, usually at the beginning of the film, Bond would walk through the double leather doors, he'd get his mission, and then he'd bugger off. And then some point later, like in Spy, there'll be like a base out in the wild somewhere, which I like. I like a bit of that. I like a bit of variety in that, and it's nice. Yeah, I tell you what, I do find interesting. Yeah. I do like the return of Tanner. He was a good Tanner, this one. Yeah, I enjoy that Tanner. Yeah. Old Michael Kitchen. What I enjoy about this, we have the sort of Tanner's briefing where he explains the whole thing about what was going on with the fingers,
fertilizer bomb, and all
the rest of it, and the lapel pin is what set the bomb off, and all the rest of it. Good plan, really. Yeah. Good old Renard for coming up with that. That was good. And then we see Bond sitting with some other agents.
Yeah, that's cool, isn't it?
Do we think they are the 00s?
I think they have to be. And I know there's not like 9 chairs like in Thunderball, whatever it is. And I think there's only 4 of them, and 3 of them are given assignments, and Bond isn't. Yeah. And one of them was a woman, which is really cool as well. But I think they had to be 00 agents.
Yeah. Well, if I remember correctly. In the original Fleming texts, there's only ever 3 00s.
And some of them are like, isn't it 0012 or
0011?
0011,
I remember that.
Which is kind of.
I can't remember what the other one. Maybe he was 002. Maybe? Yeah. So that's there's only ever 3, I think, as far as I remember, with the Fleming in the Fleming stories. And then we see the 3 in Living Daylights, don't we? There's definitely just 3 there. Yeah. But then in Thunderball, every 00 man in Europe has been brought in, and there's loads of them. Yeah. So that's interesting. Yeah. One thing that I do enjoy is seeing other 00s crop up in Bond films. I get excited about that, and I would like to see more of that. Definitely. But there we go. Bond's off the active duty list. Now, this
he's
next
not happy, is he?
He's not happy.
He's not happy.
He's proper. And
it's quite good to see him so pissed off. What?
That was a really good impression. That was like he proper snaps sparks in there. Yeah, nice. He's not happy about it, but here's something that I am very happy about: is the next scene. We've got Dr. Molly Warmflash. Now, talk to me about Dr. Molly Warmflash.
Well, the name itself is quite a good one,
isn't it? That is Roger period.
Yeah.
to a T,
Oh,
isn't it?
absolutely.
Dr. Molly Warmflash
Yeah.
could have been one of
Holly
Roger's
Goodhead,
ladies.
Molly Warmflash,
Yeah,
very, very similar.
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
What I like is listen, I've said this many times and I'm going to say it again, and it's something I've missed about the Daniel period. It's Bond being an absolute shagger. Right, that to me is a key thing. One of the things I love about On Her Majesty's Secret Service when he's hopping through rooms at night with all the different ladies, that to me is such a fun part of Bond's character. Same with Tomorrow Never Dies, where he's brushing up on a little Danish. You're like, go on, son. The same. It would always in the Roger movies. When you'd see Roger, he's always in bed with and I love that stuff, man. It's brilliant, and I know it's not modern day and all the rest of it, but bollocks to it. I fucking love it. I want to see more of it. I love him being the seduction man. These two have probably had a little.
Well, they've definitely had something before, because you have to call me this time. Yeah, so you know that's happened before, definitely. This
to me is a key part of the cinematic Bond. That Bond that loves them and leaves them. And all the rest of it. That is a key part of it. And then obviously he seduces her again and she can't resist.
Let's just skirt the issue, shall we?
And then away we go. I love that. What do you reckon about this scene?
I'm a big fan of it. I think it's just part of it, particularly with the Brosnan sort of era as well. You kind of knew you'd always get that little scene beforehand before he goes off on the big mission. But I think it's good. He's got a broken collarbone, so it's as bad as we thought it could be. And so he has that little flirt with her, and you get that little nice bit of bum as well, don't you?
A little bit of bum. Very nice. That was a theme of the Brosnan period, the middle two, wasn't it? Because she had a little bit of bum from Terry, didn't we? Old Paris last time.
Yeah, lots of bum.
And we've got a little bit of bum this time as well. Always appreciated.
Indeed.
Absolutely. Always appreciated, never expected. Now,
I like it.
Next up, we've got the Q scene.
Yes.
Right? Now, pipe down 007.
We all have to pay the piper sometime, Q.
We used a little bit of that in the JBR theme tune, didn't we?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Little moment. Whenever I watch Bond and I see a JBR theme tune quote pop up, I'm like, that's nice. Anyway, how do you feel about this?
Well, I think, first of all, there's quite a bit to say about this. Initially, obviously, you see that bagpiper, and Bond, second, he sort of stops, walks back a bit. He knows something's not quite right here. Suddenly, machine gun, flamethrower, and obviously we see Q and we get those lines, and you're like, you're just in for a good time for this particular scene. And obviously we'll discuss the end of the scene where it gets sort of quite poignant, but it's quite cool. So obviously this is where we're introduced to R. So you got that trick snooker table. I remember one of the JBR questions ages ago was how many times have we seen a snooker or pool table, and this was one of them. So snooker table that opens up, old R comes up with Bond's new Z8, BMW Z8, and the character. Okay, so obviously John Cleese gets his coat trapped in the door, talks about beverage cup holders and all this sort of thing, and you're thinking, right, okay, so Q, we don't know how many more films of Q we're going to get, and we get to see this character VAR, and he's not a fan of Bond. A bit like when Bond and Q first, you think your Goldfingers and stuff. By this point in the Q that we know and Bond's relationship, they're quite affectionate for one another. Yeah. And and obviously the respect is there. And initially that wasn't, if you're looking back at your Goldfinger and stuff. But this is kind of how I think they were going to try to set up the Bond-R relationship, because he talks about, yes, the legendary 007 wit, or at least half of it. And you're like, okay, there's that animosity there. And you think this is where they're going to go with this particular character, obviously, if it had stayed on for a few films and stuff. So what's your opinion on the whole R character and how that plays out?
I'm not sure how I feel about R. I will be honest. I think John Cleese is great. I think he's a genius. He's a very classic British figure. And I feel on some level, I'm like, that's the right choice for Bond, for a regular MI6 person. I like that. But do I like R? And I'm not sure I do like R.
Is there a way that the character could have been played that you would have liked it? Or do you just think it shouldn't have been
I suppose the thing is I feel like maybe it was a bit too done for laughs, like when they demonstrate the jacket, Q pulls the tag, Because Q's very standoffish with R as well, isn't he?
He
It's
is.
like Q doesn't really like R either.
No,
He thinks he's a bit of a pillock.
Well, he says, doesn't he? You're not here to think. You're here to do what I tell you.
Yeah.
And we don't often get to see Q being that stern, but this is his lab or workshop or whatever. You're going to play by his rules, and I kind of like that Q's got that edge to him.
Yeah, and it's it's that whole thing where he pulls the tag. And he sort of looks up at Q in shock, and then he's rolling around the pool, like, "Oh, I'm like,
it's
just
a
goes.
little bit.
It's a
you know
bit
what you said
much.
about comic booky?
Yeah,
that's definitely comic book.
Yeah, and I mean, oftentimes the whole Q sequence is very much played for laughs. Like you think of GoldenEye, with that's my lunch, and the dude's flying off in the background and the telephone box with the sort of airbag in and all that. So it is that, but this one feels just a little bit too much for my personal taste, and I'm not that excited to see R again. No, you know what I mean?
No.
Yeah.
No, I think for the majority of people, from what I've gathered, I think they'd probably agree with you in terms of character of R.
Now, I'm about to get emotional because I'll tell you why. Right, I remember this being a worry of mine back in the 90s. I remember thinking, oh man, when you saw Q again on screen in GoldenEye,
there'd been such a gap.
There'd been that gap, and it was like, oh, it's so good to see Desmond. I love Desmond so much, and then you'd see him in Tomorrow Never Dies again, and you loved him, and there was definitely that thought of like, oh man, he's getting up there in age now, and how many more Bond films is he going to have in him? And then for them to directly address that this time, and I feel like that little bit where Bond says, "You're not retiring anytime soon, are you, Q?" Bond says what we're all thinking. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because we love Q so much. We love Desmond. I adore him, and I don't want to see him go, and I don't want to see him leave. And as much as they kind of like have that sort of back and forth together, and sometimes there's that tension between Bond and Q, Bond fucking loves him himself. You know what I mean? And I feel like Pierce really sells that in this little sequence.
He totally does, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And I'm just really happy that they actually wrote that scene in, because it could have just been another Q scene with him finishing imagine if they'd cut to before he said, you're not leaving anytime. So cut before that, as he would have done with any other film. And obviously the terrible accident happened not long after the film, was it?
That's the worst part of it, man.
Not long after the film.
He's an old dude. So you kind of think, obviously he's in the twilight of his years and he's not got that long left in him. And you imagine, give it another 5 years and would he have been okay enough to continue on in the role and all that kind of stuff? You were at that stage of the game. And then for him to just die in a car crash, man,
it's not good.
Fuck, that really bums me out. And I remember when Roger died, I was so gutted. And I remember talking to people in Australia, I've never been this affected by a celebrity's death before. And as silly as that sounds, because you don't know these people, it's not like a family member or something, but somebody like Roger is such a big part of our lives. We were all so gutted when he died. And I remember feeling exactly the same with Desmond. That's the closest it came for me. I remember when Desmond, and for it to be in such a horrible way like that for an old dude, that's no way for an old man to die. It's like it should have been peacefully in his sleep. And that should have been it. That was gutting, and it makes this scene all the more powerful as well.
It's so poignant, but the fact that we've got that scene is fair dues to Purvis and Wade for writing it, because that scene means so much, obviously even more now. Yeah. And that whole bit about, where Q sort of says, I've always tried to teach you two things. Yeah. First, never let them see you bleed. Bond's like, and the second, always have an escape plan. Yeah. And as you see Q lowering down and they're looking at one another, that is the most perfect send-off for the character of Q that we've come to know and love that you can imagine. It's perfect.
And Desmond does really well there.
He really does.
The way he's looking up at Bond as well. It's almost like saying goodbye to a puppy or something. You know what I mean? When you've got to say goodbye to a puppy, it is that same feeling. There's something in Q's eyes that makes me well up a little bit when I see that. Yeah, man. Fuck. That's a strong scene, isn't it? That
it's a strong scene, and but it's tough. But I'm so glad it's there.
Yeah.
Because if it hadn't been addressed, I mean, it's yeah. I'm just so glad that
you know that he's the longest serving Bond person, isn't he?
Yeah, since from Russia, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Crazy.
Fucking hell.
All right, let's shed a tear a second. Let's just wipe
Absolutely.
those away. Okay, so Bond. We then see Bond. He's sort of by himself. He's reading up about Renard and Elektra King and the kidnapping and all that.
On a very 90s computer.
Yeah, that's another thing I noticed. Every computer is massive. They've got, you know, those sort of monitors with a huge bit behind it.
Yeah.
They're just huge, aren't they? And yeah, so certain things definitely date it. But so he's reading up, and he listens to a little clip of Elektra about the torture, saying, you know, and you can tell the effect she's having on him, even though he hasn't sort of met her properly yet. You know,
he touches the screen.
Yeah, he does,
he?
and pauses on it as the tears coming down and stuff like that. But then he sort of sees the money and does that little you know, calculation of pounds and dollars, and realizes that, hang on a minute, this money is exactly matching the ransom money for Elektra. And then he tries to access the next level, but access denied. And then he goes to see M. And now this bit is quite cool because M's with quite a few people. Well, I think Tanner, maybe Robinson, maybe a couple of others or whatever. And straight away, Bond's straight to the point, isn't he?
Yeah.
And sort of saying about, you know, well, M, he basically says, why have you...
M says, don't make this personal.
Yeah, and he's like,
I'm not you.
Yeah. And then straight away she's like, right, everyone leave us. And everyone gets off, and I will not tolerate insubordination, 007. And this tough. And then he just comes back with a really warm way of sort of saying, are you okay? Or what happened? I think he said, sorry, what happened? But like, he's just been really sort of quite aggressive, and she's been aggressive back. And then he's like, softly, what happened? And that's, again, shows their relationship. And I think that's a really cool moment.
Yeah. The M and Bond relationship is a very sort of complicated one, isn't it? Like, even when you go back to the books, and there's that whole, I always remember one of the most interesting M scenes is the one from Moonraker, where he goes in, and there's always those little things where M always refers to him as 007, and it's very formal. Whereas on this occasion, he's sort of making pleasant conversation, and Bond's thinking, okay, something's off here, what's going on? And then M ropes him in as a personal favour to come and check out this Drax dude because he reckons he's cheating and he doesn't know how and all the rest of it. Yeah. And there's almost that sense of like awkwardness from M because it's a personal thing.
He doesn't
and it's,
want to,
you know,
does
it's
he?
not professional, but you know, he kind of does it anyway. And that's always that's a really interesting M scene. And then this one is very much like M has this guilty thing hanging around her neck that she's done, and Bond is kind of he's digging around and he knows something's up, and there's that similar thing of like, fuck, she's not got that professional exterior anymore. This is the human side of her coming out, which I think is a really interesting little thing to explore.
Definitely. And again, it's sort of it's expanded on that when she tells Bond that obviously Robert King came to her and she advised against paying the ransom money. Yeah. And that's where I think this is the moment where she mentions being a mother, isn't it? Yeah. And again, that's obviously
goes against every instinct as a mother.
Yeah. And so the involvement's even deeper than Bond originally sort of knew about. Yeah. And it just sets up sort of what's to follow. But yeah, it's a bit crazy. And then obviously Bond mentions to her about the money being the same. He says, your terrorist is back. And then they go to that room and you get that big sort of 3D graphic of Renard coming up, and they talk about him, and they find out, obviously, M says that she sent 009 to kill him, and he obviously shot him, and there was a bullet, but the doctor saved him. But there's a bullet in his brain, and Molly Warmflash said it's slowly moving through his medulla oblongata, killing off his senses and all that sort of thing. Yeah. So what do you think of this? Because I think there was going to be a bit with Stamper where he's going to be reversing pleasure and pain. Yeah. So whenever he feels pain, he loves it, or something like that. And they didn't go for that in the film for whatever reason. But I think this is that expanded with a different character. What do you think?
That's totally it, isn't it? It's like when you see that glimpse of the Russian assassin in Living Daylights, where she talks about, you know, death by thighs or whatever, and that gets recycled for Xenia. That's definitely what this is, because Stamper was not meant to feel pain, was he? Like you say, it was reversed, wasn't it? So pain to him was pleasurable.
Yeah. Does that mean that if you bake him like a cupcake, he'd be like really sore and like
that's a good point. You never, if it was reversed, it would be.
If you just like went, oh, Sam,
you come give him a little cuddle, and he's like,
oh, mate, come on, let's go for a beer, and he'll be like,
Bond missed a trick there, man. That should have been the undoing of Stamper. Just give him a little cuddle and a kiss, and that would have been it. Yeah, how funny. But yeah, so that's this to me is proper Bond villain sort of. There's a proper recipe for a Bond villain, isn't it? Because it's a very difficult thing making a Bond villain, isn't it? They need to be memorable enough. They need to have their thing without it being too silly. But then you can't be so straight that they're just a random villain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we'd often say, something like Dominic Green. Is he really Bond villain material? He's cool, he's good, but he doesn't have that thing, does he? You know? And Renard has that thing. But then I guess the question is, does Renard live up to that? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah.
Which we'll obviously discuss as we go through.
Definitely.
But yeah, so that's cool. What I do like is when Molly Warmflash walks in and there's that moment of like Bond sort of like being a little bit flustered and sort of,
what is it? Moneypenny says, M says, so I hear the good doctors cleared you or whatever, and given you a clean bill of health. Noted you have exceptional stamina.
I love that.
That's class, isn't it?
Yeah, that little grin that Bond gets. That's one of the things I love about Pierce's Bond is that stuff, like it has exceptional stamina, just that little smarmy grin that he has on his face. It's brilliant, man. Yeah.
And then old Moneypenny says, I'm sure he was touched. I'm sure she was touched by his dedication to the job in hand, or something like that. There's so many, isn't there, in this film? So many.
Yeah, I love it.
But it's really cool.
What do you reckon about M's comment though? Remember, shadows stay in front or behind, never on top.
Yeah. Well, it's because of that connection, isn't it? It's a family connection. It's her friend's daughter. She knows what Bond's like. Now, come on, that's that little warning. Just behave yourself, Bond. Yeah. Behave yourself. Yeah. It's like, wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we go to Azerbaijan, don't we?
Yes, and we got Bond driving through desolated oil country. Obviously, it used to be, but again, this is kind of an interesting location. It's not somewhere that you've seen before with Bond, isn't it? It's just so in disrepair. It's obviously, apart from the people that are at this decommissioning site or whatever it is, it's uninhabited type thing.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't look like a pleasant place, which obviously Bond, you're normally thinking your beaches, your mountains, all these lovely places. And this is opposite, completely the opposite of that. So that's quite interesting from that sort of initial viewpoint, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, so you basically, this is where we meet Davidoff. Yeah. That's right. Who's a little sort of low-level henchman, I suppose. You see the choppers trimming the trees.
Yeah, and I like that. It's that little placement where you think, because that's something that prior to this film, no one would have seen that, really.
Yeah.
But it's that slight strangeness about it that you think, that is a bit odd.
Yeah.
And I love that they give you that little hint, knowing that, you'll remember that for later on.
And those are real things as well. Those sort of choppers are real. Like that's, I've seen footage of them doing that stuff in real life, like just flying along a tree line and just trimming it all back or whatever. So that's, that's not something invented for the film, which is quite interesting. So what's going on here then? So Elektra is here.
Yes,
there's a pipeline.
That's it. So this is in the decommissioning centre. Sorry. So this is like part of the pipeline. So they go to this village, don't they? And he speaks to Davidoff, and then Elektra King and Gabor turn up in the helicopter, and the villagers are rioting, aren't they? So basically, the plan for the pipeline is to go straight through the village. They've got church and the people and all this sort of stuff. And Elektra King turns up, speaks to like the Coptic priest or whatever, the village sort of dude, and he's obviously tells her, how important it all is. She comes back and then says to the foreman, right, send the pipeline around the village, but it's going to take, weeks or months and cost millions. He's like, just do it type thing. And I think this is another thing that's really important, is how much of an effect this woman has on Bond.
Yeah.
Like, indirectly through her humanism.
Yeah.
Looking after these people, and you can just see Bond. Just the looks that he gives her is like, oh, this woman's amazing, and like it just grows and grows and grows. And I think they do that really well in this film.
Yeah, I think. What do you think that is? Right, because obviously Bond's weakness is the ladies, isn't it? Time and time again, he should stick to the mission. But he's not going to shoot the sniper because she's a lady and an attractive lady, so he can't. He's not. He's gonna, and all the rest of it. I think Sophie Marceau, Elektra King, is one of those rare beauties. She's so beautiful that it is kind of spellbinding. Because you can have a beautiful lady, right? That's fair enough. There's plenty of them.
Well, I can, or
in
you can.
If you want, mate, you can do whatever you like. But you have a million of them in the Bond series, and that's great. Lovely stuff. But there is something about Elektra King that is truly spellbinding. I can imagine being in a room with her and not being able to say a word and just be like,
look anywhere else.
Exactly. There is something very, very seductive about Elektra King. There is I can imagine anybody just immediately falling in love with her, not being able to just even speak.
The casting was perfect, basically, wasn't it?
Absolutely brilliant, man.
Sophie Marceau.
She is amazing. I think she's an absolute standout, top draw.
If you're
Bond
talking
girl.
Tears in terms of Bond girls, she'd be right up there.
She certainly would. Yeah. There's just, dude, there is something about the French lady as well that is very, very special and very particular. There's something about that accent when you put it together with the physicality of Elektra. It's just, there's no stopping that, mate.
No, not at all. And also, she again, like when she talks about the pipeline being future, but we have to save what little we have of the past, and so everything like this is just. You can see Bond just warming to it. But I know Brosnan gets slated quite a lot at sometimes. But even like the way that he responds without saying a word, he looks. You know what he's thinking just by his look. And again, the chemistry great between these two.
We do get that Tracy reference, don't we? Whereas, have you ever lost a loved one?
Yes.
And he just sort of like, there's just this...
ignores it, but obviously he reacts to it without saying... And again, that's a brilliant line.
I'd actually forgotten about that little reference there, because we often say Brosnan was the only one who didn't have any Fleming stuff to play with. You look at Dalton and it was all Fleming, wasn't it? Whereas with this... With the whole Brosnan run, there was just none of it, and to have that little callback is a very nice touch. It does. That is a callback to Fleming, so that is a really nice little moment. And I do again. I get the more and more I think about this film, and the more I watch it, the more I feel like there's a Spy Who Loved Me kind of feel to this film, and I don't know what it is because it's not obvious. It's not like they're in the same locations or whatever, but there is something about it, and that reminds me of the moment with Triple X when she's like, "Oh, you're sensitive," and he's like, "About some things, yes." And you get that rare thing with Roger where he goes from Joker to dead serious, which I think makes his dead serious all the more powerful when he does do it.
Definitely.
It's unexpected, and there is, as lighthearted as this film is, fuck me, there are some dark moments in this,
definitely,
especially later. And with this moment in particular as well. It's nice. I like it.
Definitely. And then Bond basically says to her that she thinks her life might be in danger, and she basically laughs at him, sort of saying, "Well, of course, villagers are rioting, got 3 competing pipelines and all this sort of stuff." And they go into that little office, and then Bond shows the pin, her father's pin that was obviously part of the blast, and it must have been retrieved or whatever, and says that it had been switched. So for the real one, so he thinks it must be an inside job, and obviously has no idea at this point, and Elektra's sort of obviously playing it as if she obviously hadn't got a clue about it and everything like that. So that's kind of a cool little bit as well, I think. Yeah,
absolutely.
So
then next up, she wants to go and inspect the pipeline. So Bond invites himself along, picks up the pair of skis nearby, and then off they go. Now, there is something very magical about this as well. Like, seeing them both on skis together, very Majesty's
very
reminiscent, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just like Bond and Tracy going off skiing.
Sweeping vistas and all that.
I feel like, had Elektra not turned out to be a baddie, that very much could have been a serious love interest for Bond.
That's a really good point, because if you're thinking back, like what you said earlier on about the chemistry in terms of Brosnan's Bond with some of them, like obviously you've got the brief fling with Inga Bergstrom, but in terms of if you're thinking Paris Carver, not quite there, I don't think. Obviously, Natalia was a good one, but see, that's interesting. Electric King way more than Christmas Jones, anyway.
100%.
Way more.
Yeah, like when you look at Michelle Yeoh, you look at Christmas, you look at Jinx. There's just nothing there. There's no chemistry with them at all. This one, really, there is something there that really works. Yeah, there's just. I suppose when you look at Christmas Jones, and we've not even met Christmas Jones yet in the film, but you just know she's out of place. You know, it's just she's not as lovely as Denise Richards is. I've heard some very positive things about Denise Richards as a human being. She's meant to be the business. That's good. But I feel like that just wasn't the right choice for Christmas Jones. Anyway, we'll get to that. Yeah. But yeah, so we're skiing along. Another thing that I like about Elektra King, that again is very much Tracy, is how good a skier she is. In fact, she kind of outskis Bond. Yeah, she outskis Bond, so she's super capable. Yeah. And if you think about with Tracy, how good a skier she was, she could skate, she could drive, and all this. And Elektra King is one of those Bond girls that she's very capable at a lot of things, and she's obviously a kick-ass skier as well, which I think is really good to see. Yeah, absolutely. So there we go. So they go to where the pipeline will meet. Yeah. That's the what they're going to check out. And then we see some Parahawks. Yeah. Now, how do you feel about these? So these are interesting. So I think the first time I saw them, I was like, oh, wow, I never sort of quite obviously seen skidoo type things and obviously parachutes, but I've not seen that combination before. So seeing them for the first time, I was like, oh, that's really good. So they've got 4 Parahawks that are after them. Basically, I think Elektra kind of dives off one way and Bond says he'll lead them to the trees. And so this action scene, it's a decent one. I think there are some bits I really like and some bits which are okay. So there's sort of the bit where one Parahawk kind of drops within the trees and tries to follow Bond, but Bond kind of outmaneuvers him and he ends up just wrapping himself around a tree. It's a bit like in Star Wars, Return of the Jedi, you know, the stormtroopers when they're in that forest and one wraps itself around a tree, a bit similar to that. Yeah. So that one you're thinking okay, and then 2 of the Parahawks land and eject their chutes with one guy still above, and then the guy above's dropping these hand grenades, and there's that bit where Bond sort of does that big leap and the explosion behind him. He does a bit of winding windows, though. I'm not a fan of that. Like, if you're a kick-ass skier, you could hold your stance throughout that jump. You shouldn't be winding windows. Oh. That's my view on it. Anyway, but this guy above's chucking his hand grenades left, right, and centre, and one of them ends up exploding in front of one of his sort of mates and blinds him, and then he ends up crashing into like a snowbank. So they're not the kind of cleverest of opposition, shall we say. Yeah. But then there's a really cool bit where obviously one of them's chasing Bond and he's going right towards the edge of the ski cliff and just does a sharp turn and dives onto the ground, and then you just see the Parahawk fly off. And I love anything like that. You know, like in Quantum, the car chase where it flies off. Yeah. And this one, and then he flies away, and then you've got that looks amazing. And then you've got Brosnan basically going, you know, a bit smug on, see you back at the lodge. And then he thinks that's it, and then suddenly reserve chute deploys, and you see his how annoyed he is, frustrated. He's God, and I like that bit. What do you think of that? Yeah, that's cool. It's I tell you what, it's like a reverse Spy Who Loved Me, isn't it? Oh yeah, it's going straight off the edge. Yeah, you think that's game over. Yeah, parachute comes out. That's such a good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. So yeah, it's a solid action sequence. I suppose the thing is like when you think of this period of bondage, I feel like sometimes the action sequences can be a bit like, right, what's something cool we can do? You know, and it's like, all right, well, we've got these vehicles here that are like skidoos with parachutes that you can fly with. Let's throw those in. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's the same with Die Another Day when you had those weird little things that they did this sort of the jump out of the plane, what are those things called, where they're like holding on to those weird wing-looking things, whatever that is.
Switchblade or something.
It's something like that. It's been nearly 20 years, Chris. But I get that. And again, this is very much in the Roger mold, I think, this whole sequence, isn't it? You know, and you might look at that as a good thing, or you might look at it as a bad thing. But it's a solid sequence. I wouldn't say it's up there with your Majesty's ski chases or your Fiora's only ski chases.
There's no suspense.
No, I guess not.
If you think about Majesty's being chased by the gunman, you think about Fiora's only with Eric Kriegler and that whole bit, like where he's got the sniper and he's behind the tree. That is so suspenseful. And then you got the whole chase with the motorbikes. I mean, that's a brilliant scene. This one, you're never kind of like, oh, Bond's under threat. You're never thinking Bond's in trouble. There's no suspense. Some of the action scenes are pretty decent, but overall, it's not one that you wouldn't put it up there, in my opinion, I don't think.
Absolutely.
And then there's that bit, I'm not sure about this bit either. So he sees the sort of Parahawk below him, and he does that jump off the cliff, like the massive jump. And he ends up ripping the. Well, first of all, he does this sort of tweaked out with his ski. Again, sorry for any sort of videos out there, maybe. I don't know, but he does this little tweak out of it when he does the jump. So he moves his skis to the side, and it just looks a bit, you know.
So you're a stunt man, basically, as far as I'm concerned, aren't you? That's a deep love of yours. So you will notice things that, you know, that others probably wouldn't notice. So obviously you get that shot. He does the jump, tears the parachute with the ski, lands, and then that's what is the undoing of the Parahawk. You're saying you're not happy with that?
Well, I'm saying that very first bit where he goes off the top of the cliff, he sort of moves his skis to the side. It's like a showing off move,
right?
But totally not when you want to do it.
Okay.
Like Roger going backwards, doing that backflip to land on someone and knocking him over. There's a purpose behind that. So it's showing off, but there's a purpose, and it's good. Doing that little tweaked ski thing just looked not very good. But anyway, that's my opinion.
It's a bit of posing, like 10 points.
It's like,
and now I'm
exactly.
Do it. Right,
it's like, why do that? That's ridiculous. And then the actual cliff jump, you know, fair enough, and he rips a chute and stuff. But there's a bit just after that. So basically, because he's ripped the chute, it's unstable, and he ends up careering into the other guy, and they blow up. And there's a bit where Bond, before that explosion, he's just sorting out his gloves or his, you know, the little wraps or his ski poles. He just knows the job's done. And that's kind of cool because he's just like, I've done it. And then obviously the two barrels.
I've done it.
I've done it. Job done. And then obviously Elektra King comes over. But it was because of that explosion then that the whole snow bridge or whatever it is collapses and they fall down. Now this is quite a cool bit. Obviously, he pulls the tag for the inflatable bit with Elektra King and she's panicking. You know, really, really afraid. Obviously, the snow's all around them, and Bond uses his light on his watch inside, and then he's like, he tries to calm her down. He's like, look at my eyes, look at my eyes, look at my eyes. And she says 3 times, and eventually she does, so that's all right. But I think it's quite cool. What I did like was the bit where obviously he unzipped the thing to deflate it and then punches his way out. And there's that shot of them kind of crawling out. Again, very Majesty's with the avalanche.
So.
And I like that bit. And obviously, the little gadgets and rescuing Elektra is pretty cool as well. But I like that bit. And definitely record Majesty's for me, that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that about finishes out the first third of the film. How are you feeling about it so far, Chris? How if you were to say, give it some sort of rating, is it strong? Is it okay? Is it a bit rubbish? What are you thinking?
At the moment, I'd put it halfway between okay and strong. So I don't think it's completely balls out all the way through. But I think there are a lot of really nice pieces. I love the pre-titles, the car chase, the jump out the window in Bilbao. I like the intrigue behind Elektra and Renard and what's, you know, we're not quite sure what's going on. Loads of good scenes with M and Q and Moneypenny. All 3 scenes with Bond, brilliant. Like obviously bringing M's character into it a bit more. A lot of innuendo, must be said. A lot of cheese, but you know, a lot of people like cheese, so that's all right. And overall, I think it's a solid first third of the film for me.
It's a solid opener.
Yeah.
I tell you what it does have, because sometimes, a lot of the time, you'll have a solid opening. I actually think the most challenging part of a film is actually the final act.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to just dissolve into shitty action. And I think the first bit of the film is perhaps, in a lot of cases, the best part of a lot of Bond films.
For a lot of them, yeah.
And what this one does have is an absolute iconic classic boat chase that is up there with the best of them.
Yeah.
Like, that is what, as far as I'm concerned, one of the great all-time Bond action sequences.
Would you put it above Live and Let Die, or as the same level, or below?
Let me just think about the Live and Let Die
them,
boat
isn't it?
chase.
Because obviously different styles, but both are amazing.
And it's a very different time as well. Like what stunt work was capable back in the early 70s compared to the late 90s.
It's nice seeing so much in London, though, isn't it? And
it is. Do you know what? I think this one might win by a little bit.
Yeah, there's so much going on.
Yeah.
Tough, but it's good. So there we are. Yeah, first done and dusted.
The world is not enough. All right, mate. So what's going to happen then? Are you going to come back next week and help me out with part 2? Or are you going to leave me to do that by myself?
Nah, you can do it. You were so good at the start. I don't think I'll come back.
Very nice.
Yeah. I think you can rope me into it. Yeah.
All right, mate. Sounds good to me. All right, then. So that is The World Is Not Enough, Part 1. We will be back next week with The World Is Not Enough, Part 2. So until then, I've been Tom Sears. I've been Chris Wright. And James Bond Radio will return next week. See you then, everybody. Bye!
Hope you enjoyed the show. Good night.